It was a bright morning in the heart of the city, and the sun spilled through the enormous windows of Adrian Keller's mansion. It painted streaks of gold across the polished marble floors and gleaming steel countertops of his kitchen. Adrian, a self-made millionaire known for his cold precision and unbending discipline, had just finished a long business call. Everything in his world was perfectly organized, timed to the second, and spotless. His life was a fortress of order. But this morning, a tiny imperfection broke the silence. It was the faint, almost apologetic sound of a fork softly scraping against a ceramic plate, coming from somewhere behind the grand kitchen island. Curiosity, an emotion he rarely indulged, pulled him forward. He expected to find a member of the staff preparing a late breakfast, or perhaps a new cleaner being careless. He moved silently on the balls of his feet, his expensive shoes making no sound. When he rounded the corner, his perfectly controlled world came to a sudden, jarring halt. There, crouched on the floor, tucked away in the shadows where the wall met the dining table, was his young maid, Isla. Her uniform was slightly wrinkled, and her eyes were fixed on the plate in her lap. She was eating what looked like leftovers from the lavish dinner party he had hosted the previous night. She wasn't sitting at a table. She wasn't even using a proper dining chair. She was hiding, making herself as small as possible, taking small, hurried bites as if she were a thief, terrified of being discovered. For a long, silent moment, Adrian just stood there completely frozen. A billionaire who could buy anything he desired, watching a young woman hide in a corner to eat food that had been destined for the trash can. Adrian was not a cruel man, but success had built high walls around his heart. He had become detached from raw emotion, from empathy, and from the quiet, desperate struggles that lived just beneath the surface of ordinary lives. To him, life was a series of numbers, meetings, and profitable investments. He had long ago forgotten the gnawing feeling of hunger or the cold grip of fear. Yet watching Isla try to make herself invisible just to eat stirred something deep inside him, a strange and unfamiliar ache he couldn't quite understand. He felt a phantom pain, a memory of a life he thought he had buried forever. Before she could look up and see him, he quietly stepped back, retreating from the scene as silently as he had approached. He walked away, but his mind was no longer on business. It was spinning, replaying the image of her small, trembling hands clutching that plate. The image haunted him for the rest of the day. Who was this woman? Why did she have to hide to eat food that he had so carelessly discarded? Later that afternoon, driven by this new, unsettling feeling, Adrian reviewed the household employment records. He found Isla's file. She had been working for him for 8 months. Her record was perfect, always punctual, always polite, never asking for anything extra. Her salary was modest, but by industry standards, it was fair, or so he had thought. It struck him with the force of a physical blow that he had never once asked about her life, her family, or if she was happy. She was just another quiet, efficient part of the machinery that made his home function smoothly. She was a ghost in his own house. That night, for the first time in many years, Adrian couldn't sleep. He lay in his enormous bed, staring at the ceiling. The image of Isla in the corner burned into his mind. He found himself thinking about what it truly meant to have everything, and what it meant to have so little that you had to hide for a meal. The next morning, he deliberately entered the kitchen earlier than usual. He saw Isla already at work, wiping down the counters. Her face was pale, and there were dark circles under her eyes, telling a story of exhaustion he had never bothered to notice before. She moved with a delicate, careful precision, almost as if she were afraid of making a sound, afraid of taking up space. As he watched from the doorway, she accidentally knocked a spoon from the counter. It clattered loudly on the marble floor. Isla flinched violently, like a frightened animal, her eyes wide with panic as she scrambled to pick it up. In that single, reflexive movement, something inside Adrian's fortified heart broke. He finally understood. This wasn't just about food, this was about dignity. It was about a person trying to survive in absolute silence, bearing her burdens alone. He left quietly again, but now his observation had a purpose. He started paying attention. He noticed she always took the smallest portions from the staff meals. He saw her skip breakfast many times, waving it off with a weak smile and pretending she wasn't hungry. His quiet investigation soon led him to the head housekeeper, who reluctantly revealed Isla's story. Nearly every dollar she earned was sent back to her small village. The money was for her ailing mother, who needed constant medical care, and for her younger brother's schooling. She kept almost nothing for herself, barely enough to get by, certainly not enough to eat properly every day. That afternoon, Adrian went to his favorite fine dining restaurant, but the expensive, expertly prepared meal tasted like ash in his mouth. Every luxurious bite was a bitter reminder of Isla's hidden corner and her plate of scraps. He started thinking about his own past, about the early years when he had been a struggling intern, sleeping on office couches and surviving on instant noodles, dreaming of a better life. Somewhere on his climb to the top, his success had erased those painful memories, building walls between the hungry young man he was and the powerful man he had become. The following week, Adrian decided it was time to tear down some of those walls. He would act, not with pity, but with purpose. He called all of his household staff together for a meeting, a rare event that made everyone nervous. He stood before them and made a quiet but firm announcement. From that day forward, every single person working in his household would eat their meals together in the main dining room, at the same grand table where he ate. There would be no more staff meals in the kitchen, no more leftovers, no more separation. He declared that there would be equality under his roof. The announcement was met with stunned silence. Everyone was speechless, but no one was more shocked than Isla. She looked at him, her eyes wide with disbelief. Later, she tried to thank him, her voice trembling with emotion. But Adrian simply offered a faint, genuine smile and said, "No one should ever have to hide to eat." In the days that followed, the entire mansion felt different. The cold, sterile atmosphere began to soften, replaced by a gentle warmth. The heavy silence was broken by the sound of quiet conversation and even occasional laughter during mealtimes. Even Adrian found himself changing. He started lingering at the dining table longer, listening to the small stories of his staff's lives, learning about their families and their dreams, things he had never paid the slightest attention to before. But his plan wasn't complete. A few weeks later, he called Isla into his large, intimidating study. She walked in nervously, her hands clasped tightly together, expecting to be given a special task or, worse, a reprimand for some unknown mistake. Instead, Adrian handed her a thick envelope and a set of documents. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a fully paid scholarship fund for her brother, his entire education, and a comprehensive medical support plan to cover all of her mother's treatments. Isla stared at the papers, reading the words over and over, unable to believe they were real. Tears began to well up in her eyes, blurring the ink. She looked up at him, her expression a mix of shock and overwhelming gratitude. Adrian spoke softly, his voice full of a sincerity she had never heard from him before. "You've spent your life helping others," he said. "It's time you let someone help you." From that day on, everything truly changed for both of them. With proper medical care, Isla's mother slowly began to recover. Her brother enrolled in a good school, his future suddenly bright, and Isla herself began to smile, a genuine, radiant smile that lit up her entire face as she worked. Adrian, meanwhile, felt a shift within his own soul. He began visiting orphanages and community shelters, quietly sponsoring food programs through anonymous donations. The man who once believed only in profits and deals started to believe in humanity again. He once told a business associate, "I used to think wealth was about what you could own. I've learned it's really about what you can give away without expecting anything in return." Months passed, and the mansion that once echoed with a quiet, lonely formality now carried the warmth of shared meals and soft laughter. Isla, now a vibrant and confident young woman, often prepared extra plates of food from their shared dinners to take to nearby shelters, an idea Adrian fully supported. The painful memory of her hiding in the corner had become the defining moment of his transformation, a constant reminder that real change doesn't start with grand gestures. It starts in the small, quiet moments when we choose to truly see the people that others ignore. One bright afternoon, Adrian sat at the long, polished dining table with his entire staff. Sunlight streamed in through the towering windows, illuminating the happy faces around him, and for the first time in years, he felt a profound sense of peace. It wasn't the empty peace that came from luxury, but the deep, fulfilling peace of knowing he had finally done something truly right. Ela served the last dish and then took her seat at the table with everyone else, no longer in the shadows, but as a valued member of their shared home. As they all passed the food and shared a meal, Adrian realized that the young woman who had once hidden to eat leftovers had taught him the greatest lesson of all. Compassion is the only real currency of a meaningful life.